News on 6 begins a week of special reports tonight before the Centennial of the Tulsa Race Massacre.
Our search for answers took us to 6 cities as we explored America's history of racial violence.
News on 6's Amy Slanchik takes us to North Carolina, where white supremacists overthrew a city's government and black men were murdered more than 100 years ago.
The sun rises on the North Carolina coast, and the Atlantic waves glide over the sand and shells on the shoreline of Wilmington, a beach town full of activity along the ocean, and downtown near the Cape Fear River.
There's so much to do. There's a lot of breweries, plenty of places to eat.
Cody Orange, who grew up in Oklahoma, moved here a few years ago with his family. Cheese. But away from the busy sidewalks, fresh seafood and boats, and college life at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, the town has a history familiar to Tulsa.
Wilmington was one of the first examples of mass murder. No one held accountable, and the white leadership became proud of what they did.
Historians like Lee Ray Umfleet say the 1898 massacre is considered to be the only successful coup d'etat in U.S. history, an overthrow of a legally elected government by force. On November 10th at City Hall, the progressive white mayor and every city alderman, including several black men, were forced to resign under the pressure of white supremacists. A months-long statewide white supremacy campaign that spilled out on the front pages of newspapers helped lead to the coup. Outside, white mobs were taking over the streets, historians say killing at least 40, but as many as 200 black men.
In the course of one day, everything in the city changed, and it meant that the African American community that was financially stable, upward moving, and vibrant was then decimated.
Umfleet works for the state and led the research for a 2005 report on the massacre, later turned into a book. She says the first attack was at the Daily Record, a black newspaper set on fire that would never print again.
Just driving by, it looks like the church parking lot.
It's a similar story at the intersection where she says the first shots were fired.
This is an empty lot. There are no markers, there are no monuments. There is nothing to tell us that something happened here that was so tragic.
It's peaceful here now. But Umfleet says 6th and Bladen was the deadliest site of the massacre.
By the end of that exchange, as many as 25 to 40 people were killed at this intersection by the machine gun at one full swoop.
A building that still stands strong today is St. Stephen African Methodist Episcopal Church. Historians say St. Stephen AME Church served as a hub to the black community, with a library, dentist office, and a swimming pool inside.
In this photo, Athalia and I are sitting on the steps to her porch.
Cynthia Brown is the church historian and a descendant of a survivor.
My great-grandmother, Athalia Howe, witnessed a man being shot when he was leaving his home going to work that morning.
She says Athalia, like so many others, first ran toward the church to seek refuge, but realized it was under siege by men known as the Red Shirts.
It was believed that St. Stephen, being the hub that it was for the community, was harboring ammunition.
Historians say the Red Shirts forced their way inside, but didn't find ammo and moved on without damaging the church. Today, Athalia is honored with this plaque on one of the pews. It wasn't until the 1950s, 60s, and 70s that African Americans started serving as police officers, firefighters, and politicians again. Today, there are 2 black men on the city council. Now, a memorial honors the victims and shares the story of what happened in 1898. Conversations in the community during the 100th anniversary were pivotal to the city's future.
That began, I think, a healing process, but that healing process is nowhere near complete.
That's one reason both women say looking back at Wilmington's history, while difficult, is so important.
If we don't inform ourselves, we can't inform our children.
To forget is a tragic thing in and of itself.
In Wilmington, North Carolina,
We have to remember these things.
Amy Slanchik, Oklahoma Zone, News on 6.